Hi, everybody. This is Lauren Baker, founder of Search Engine Journal. Welcome to today's SEJShow, sponsored by SEMrush. With me, I have Daniel Alvarado of AdClicks. Daniel, how's it going?
It's going very well. Thank you for having me. Very excited to be on the show.
Well, today we're going to talk about a little bit about social media advertising and kind of where social media, that gray area, not just between social media and search, but then all of the different social platforms in general. But before we get into that, Daniel, how about a little bit about your background, yourself, and your company?
Of course. Thank you. Well, I am the Daniel Alvarado. I am the CEO of White Shirt Media and AdClicks. White Shirt Media is a digital advertising agency that has been in the market for over 10 years. And we provide performance marketing. So anything from Google Ads, Microsoft, social ads, and SEO. And as of last year, we launched AdClicks, which is a marketing reporting tool for advertisers and also for agencies to leverage and connect, the different data points into reports.
Well, let's see. So you have an agency, and
Yeah.
then you launched AdClicks. Was AdClicks a technology that you were using internally, and then you decided to bring it out more front-facing? How did that work, and how did that transition go? Because there's a lot of different agencies that do have their own internal technology.
Tools, yeah.
Yeah. How exactly did that come about? That's fairly interesting.
Thank you for that great question. So AdClicks actually came about as a pilot program. We have been premier partners at White Shirt Media since 2014 from Google. And of course, we needed to be able to have some internal reporting in terms of how our accounts were doing. And of course, exporting that data from the MCC or from Microsoft MCC, putting it into a sheet. It was a bit of a tedious process. So especially if we want to do it at a portfolio level. So AdClicks came about as an internal tool originally. We kind of tested it, battle tested it with our team of advertisers and our marketing strategists. And we felt like last year we were very much ready to go on the market. We wanted to give it a spin that was different than what was out there. We had found a lot of challenges with different tools that we were paying for at the time that we have been paying for years as an advertising agency. And we felt like we were able to crack the code in terms of making it really simple for our internal team. And we knew that that would resonate with other agencies as well in terms of the features that we were trying to offer at the time.
That's super cool. That's a great story to hear. So we kind of elaborated about this a little bit in the intro, but there is a little bit of overlap now between social media and search. And it used to be that people would just go to a search engine to find what they're looking for. But you have generations that have grown up with social media, and also generations that aren't necessarily as integral as some others. TikTok recently launched TikTok ads for search. Could you go into a little bit about how that works and what your experience has been working on campaigns that are search oriented within TikTok?
Yeah, I think just to clarify a little bit, they're actually in the process or the very early stages of testing the search ads in select regions. So it's not really available just yet to every advertiser out there. But there's a lot of hype that's surrounding search ads for TikTok because it would come in to kind of move and shake the environment around search ads, because right now it's really primarily just Google. There's not really a lot of strong competition. I think there are select industries that work really well within Microsoft. Microsoft is there. It's obviously a big player, but I think TikTok coming into this, especially with the traction that they've been able to acquire over the last year or so, there's been a lot of traction in terms of different. It's no longer just Gen Z. It's now actually a lot more age ranges that are actually taken into TikTok. And so we are finding a lot more of our clients finding interest within going into TikTok. And we believe very strongly that once this is actually available, it's going to revolutionize and be very, very important for, let's say, going beyond just the traditional ads that you're seeing today on social media.
So when I think of TikTok, and of course there's TikTok, there's Instagram Reels, there's most social media is going video. Do you find that yourself being an agency and working with clients and managing these campaigns, are you doing a lot more video advertising than previously? Is the majority of what you're doing? Is it integrated into a larger campaign? How does it typically work on your side, given the emphasis on video and thumb scrolling through videos all day by users of all the platforms now?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I'm very strong with my thumb nowadays. So I'm a big consumer of social media myself, and I think we all are to a degree. I think in terms of the trends that you're going to see this year and moving forward, I think it's actually not really new, but it's something that's been carried over for the last maybe couple of years. But we are going to see a lot more funds being put by advertisers and by agencies in terms of video production and the video production quality. There's a lot of people that are investing in terms of, let's say, refreshing their creatives and their ad copy and making it a little bit more, let's say, top-notch production, because that's what's finding to be very appealing to users today. And so that's one of what I think is going to be a big difference maker moving forward. Us as an agency, for example, we have partnered with different, let's say, video production companies in different regions of the US, depending on where our customers are located, for example, because we know how important it is going to be to maybe have a video crew, a person go over physically with the client, take pictures of, their business, make some videos, because you'll also find, and that's actually one of the challenges that we faced last year, that businesses, they want to be on social, but they don't have the material to showcase, what their business is. They have unprofessional, let's say, smartphone pictures that they took themselves, and that oftentimes kind of, let's say, refrains or puts a stop or a dent in terms of how effective their messaging can be online. And so that's what I would recommend is to find, if you are an agency that doesn't have the manpower to do that, is to find different video production companies within different regions so that you can support your customer, give them that flexibility, because that's going to make a big difference in terms of video play rate, in terms of how viral your videos can get. And those are some of the metrics that, again, going into social ads that you're going to be able to monitor. And so if right now you're just looking at, okay, how many impressions does my video get? That's going to tell you one part of the story, but how much are those videos being shared? How far through that video are people playing it? And again, of course, just how much people are you touching with that?
Very cool. So video production is one component, but one maybe controversial subject that's come up, especially right before the holidays, and it's really heated up this week, is ChatGPT, especially ChatGPT 4. So the ability to create visual assets and then possibly long-term video assets utilizing AI. Where do you find AI-generated content? What are your views on AI-generated content? And is this something that you're utilizing in any of your campaigns, or do you see your company going that way?
I think you'll see, in my experience, what I've noticed so far is there's two completely polar sides to the story. You're going to find some people that are like, this is the time to just basically save all of your, let's say, time to produce a video or to produce content and just leave it to the AI. And then you just maybe spell check it a little bit and things along those lines, especially, prior to GPT-4 with GPT-3, it was mostly obviously just text. So you used to see that a lot. Like I saw it all over my LinkedIn network. It's just AI generated headlines, AI generated, blog posts, AI generated meta tags for SEO, for example. And so that's been basically blooming everywhere at the time. And I think if you want my opinion on it, my opinion is that it's a great way to brainstorm ideas, but I would never allow my team, for example, to completely rely on the AI generated content for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's not original content. So you have no guarantees, for example, that the content that will be provided will be fully original. So you still have to be able to work on that. Number two, ChatGPT doesn't necessarily know the unique selling propositions of your customer. Only you know that to a degree. So unless you're able to provide more context to the tool, which at some point, for example, with GPT-4, you can provide maybe some more context around some of those things. But at least as of today, providing that context on those unique selling propositions, what geos they're discussing, some of the things that the client has discussed to you directly, that makes you a lot more capable of doing that. So what I prefer to use ChatGPT for is to actually just brainstorm and get ideas on, for example, what are some of the common selling points from other competitors that maybe my client is. So like I'll go in there and I'll research some of those, and you can ask it to, for example, set up a list and tables and some references. You can also, for example, get some benchmarks with, let's say, the citations, so that you know, for example, what specific outlet published that specific number. So my approach towards ChatGPT is more around research, and as opposed to an actual content production. And I still have my team, kind of put the effort in terms of creating that very original piece that really appeals and speaks to the voice of the customer, because you also don't have that with ChatGPT. You don't have a voice control, right? And so you have to navigate that. And if you are working with hundreds or thousands of customers, every one of them is going to have a different voice and how they want their customers to perceive them. So that would be like my short answer, not so short answer to how I approach ChatGPT for creatives.
Yeah, I can really, see it being important with ideation, brainstorming, maybe
Yes.
even to a degree story, right? Like getting an idea of maybe what to put in different thumbnails that you're utilizing in video campaigns, or what the competitors may be doing that's popping, that's working well in video campaigns, just like utilizing that as a way storyboard. And then, of course, putting together the final product with it, to where it's actually being an assistant, which is
Exactly.
what it should be.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because looking, for example, at the video of the announcement of ChatGPT 4, even the ChatGPT and the OpenAI team are very clear about, like, we are not designing ChatGPT to be the one that does things for you. It's designed so that it amplifies your capabilities as a person and save you the time on some of those key things. But ultimately, the sum of 1 + 1 here is going to be 3, because you're going to get a lot of value from ChatGPT, but not so that it does it for you.
Very cool. Very cool. So still left to be seen, still very new. It seems like every single industry is talking about it right now. I know in the world of SEO, it's really shook things up. I mean, there was Google released a core update yesterday. I saw more buzz about ChatGPT 4 than the Google core update. Right?
It was ChatGPT day. There was no competition. Like, there was a lot of other announcements, like Google, like you said, the new SEO updates, but also prior to that, like, you had Google Bard, which is now their AI assistant as well.
Right.
And they didn't really get that much fuss. Nobody's really talking about it nearly as much as ChatGPT. So there's definitely a lot to come from that. And a lot of different use cases that haven't really been tested or disclosed just yet. Because the more capabilities they add, the more you're going to be able to use it for, especially now that it supports images. So before it was just text, and now it supports images, and it can interpret images and kind of give you opinions on it. And so I anticipate further proliferation of the ChatGPT into more of the creative and marketing world. But again, my take on that would be use it for ideation, use it for brainstorming, and then put your own little spice into it, because that's how you can flavor the food better.
Amazing. So let's talk more about AdClicks, social results, things like that. Someone's running an ad campaign on TikTok, maybe on Pinterest, on Facebook, on Twitter, on other social media outlets, possibly even some CTV campaigns. How we're talking about multiple different platforms, multiple different ways of targeting, multiple different ROI, different metrics. How do you bring all of it in as one and show that ROI through one system versus a little bit here, a little bit there, whatever it may be? Because in the world of search, it's mostly Google. I mean, but social media, it's all over the place, and it's always changing.
I think you have a great point there in terms of, with Google, you could just find one tool, and most of the tools are going to be able to pull it in, right? So you have the metrics there that you need, and it's pretty straightforward. I think with social, the challenge is that finding a tool that is able to blend the information and provide you with kind of a consolidated output of the information that you have, that's the challenge to finding. So my recommendation is aligning and basically essentially picking metrics that are maybe called slightly different between the different providers, but ultimately mean the same thing. And there's a few different tools that allow you to do that. For example, if you use Data Studio, or which is now Looker Studio, for example, or if you've ever tried Supermetrics, or if you ever tried, like, there's a couple of different reporting tools that allow you to essentially kind of pull the data in together. But the most important thing is, again, being able to generate one single output of data that's basically mirroring or trying to say, okay, well, this metric is called this here, and this other metric is called this there, but they both mean the same thing, right? So that's the key component, that you're able to essentially bring them all into one roof and put them together. And so that's one of the challenges that I see across the board. The second thing that I see as a challenge is that oftentimes the results are interpreted individually or just on the platform, so just based on the provider data. So for example, if I have a Facebook ads campaign, then I have a Pinterest campaign and a LinkedIn ads campaign, I might look at them separately and then just see, okay, well, how much engagement did I get on each? Or for example, just how many likes, how many shares, it's really difficult to put that into some sort of a revenue number. So what you have to make sure that you always have is some sort of a tracking mechanism that is not reliant only on the vendor. So for example, because you might have some conversions on Facebook and some conversions on LinkedIn and some conversions on Pinterest. But what's important is that if you're a business that has a CRM, make sure that within your CRM, you have some sort of an attribution system as well. So that, for example, you can keep track of multi-touch. And that's a great way to be able to influence that, so that then you can say, okay, towards the end of that buying funnel, so from the original lead all the way down into a purchase, I'm able to say, okay, well, this purchase was worth this much money, and I had a touch point from this social campaign, from this search ads, and then also from this other social posting. So again, to summarize, you need to make sure that your source of truth is one place that is not just a vendor, because we're living now in a multi-vendor world or a multi-channel world. So your single set of source of truth cannot be just that one specific platform or that one specific publisher, but rather what is your first party in this case, which would be your CRM. Or if you don't have a CRM, maybe you have just Sheets, so that you have some sort of a spreadsheet where you can track that. Or if you have some sort of a tool that can do that for you, that would be the ideal way to go about it.
And at AdClicks, do you integrate in the CRMs like HubSpot and other popular CRMs, such as like others out there?
Yeah, so currently we support integration with Salesforce. And to give you some context on why that is, obviously we come from AdClicks being an internal tool, and White Trick Media internally uses Salesforce. So of course that was our number one CRM that we put that in. But we also have on the roadmap to be able to integrate with HubSpot, to be able to integrate with Zendesk, with Soho CRM, with a couple of other ones that we have on the pipe. And we've got a pretty aggressive roadmap for development. So we're sure we'll catch up on those very, very rapidly. Speaking of AdClicks, for example, one of the things that we encourage people to do is, again, this is a combination not just of AdClicks, but also in terms of how you approach marketing, is to make sure that you're doing smaller conversions or measuring smaller portions of your conversion path. So for example, let's just say that, I'm in B2B sales, and I have a specific package that I'm selling. Sure, I could track the conversion of the purchase or the subscription, but there's a lot of steps that happen up until that point that are valuable, actions within that kind of buyer funnel. If you go back or you circle back like 10 years ago, everybody was like, no, those conversions don't really matter. Just focus on your revenue. 10 years later now, with a lot of the changing environment in terms of, a cookieless world, the fact that you have cross devices. So you have some people like starting the process in your phone and then going into the computer and then going somewhere else. Like, it's so difficult to put all of the pieces together. And so the smaller things that you can track now help you tell that story of, okay, well, for example, if you're doing e-commerce, like you said, or B2B sales, well, how many website visits did I have? Out of those website visits, how many of those, for example, turn into like newsletter subscriptions? How many of those turn into like a form submission or a schedule appointment? For example, how many of those added it to the cart? And then again, kind of like drop cart. So then you can put together some sort of a funnel, and you can see kind of where your drop off is. And then you can also say, for example, let me say from all of the newsletter subscriptions, how many of those come from each social media outlet, for example, so you can kind of put that together. But the most important thing is you have to track those individual steps that lead that buyer into that ultimate kind of win statement, because that's going to allow you that flexibility, because you can't afford to just wait until you measure that purchase, because it takes too long for buyers nowadays to do that. It's very difficult, especially with across devices.
And I'm looking at the site right now, and in terms of integrations, I see that you can bring in data from not only social media, but also SEO via analytics and Google Analytics and some other tools. And talking about multi-touch attribution. So I feel that in the world of SEO, people look at it as a very direct response oriented marketing channel. Like, oh, you got this traffic from Google, it converted. Okay, then you get attribution. Whereas that's typically not the case. People like to do research. They almost every result in Google. I mean, there's been some changes in the core update I noticed today, but it was almost every update, every search you would do in Google, you would get top 10 lists, peer reviews. And what that means is that people are they're doing their research, they're trying to figure things out. They may visit your site one day via SEO, do research, an ad down the road, visit via the ad, but SEO was part of that, or organic was part of that, or maybe one of the last steps of the buyer's journey is to actually go to the site, do a search, find the site, find some basic information from it, and then from that organic traffic or that organic visit, make that final decision to then buy, which could even be a branded search. So how do you track attribution points through SEO, through social, through all of that with an AdClick? Is there any way that the client or even the marketer can see how all of these touch points are related within this journey?
Yeah, so we support integrations for analytics, standard universal analytics, and of course we also support GA4, which is, for example, something that funny enough, up to like a couple months ago, wasn't really in Looker Studio for some odd reason in terms of an integration. But what we are able to do within AdClicks is to illustrate, for example, source mediums, and we're also able to illustrate those assisted conversion paths so that you can kind of see which are your top buying paths. And so as long as you have the correct sort of traffic tagging, because that's also kind of a very important part in order for analytics to work, then you will be able to see those buying paths within AdClicks also. And what we do differently, for example, versus just seeing with analytics, is that you can then combine within the same page, for example, your top buying paths or your top converting paths. And then on the right-hand side, for example, you could actually have your individual performance from social media networks. So you can combine social media information from the vendor directly, let's say from Facebook, from Instagram, and then also just in general from like Search Console even, for example, and then put all of those within the right-hand side. And then on the left-hand side, you can have your assisted path or your assisted conversions, for example. So you're able to get more context because we're able to bring in different points of data into that same page to be able to tell that story. So that's one of the things that you can do. And we also support calculated metrics. So for example, if you're trying to add, one of the things that we see as a common use case, for example, is specifically, if you want an example within social media, for example, is you'll have, in Google, it's so simple because you just have one conversion column and that's it. If you look at Facebook, for example, you're going to have like so many different conversion columns because of the different objectives that you may have. And so what you're able to do is, depending on the specific objectives that your client may have, you can choose to add certain conversion columns, and then we can give you a total result from those conversion columns. And we can also give you a custom calculated conversion rate, for example, based on how those items are going to be. So we can also calculate, for example, a drop-off rate. So we can calculate the drop of, for example, landing page visits versus, for example, form submissions. and then from form submissions over to purchases. So we can also do a calculated metric based on those. So it's really simple to kind of illustrate those different things that you wouldn't really be able to do naturally within the individual vendor. And again, give you more context because you're able to bring in different sources into the same page.
That's super cool. That's super cool. And where do you see the transition to GA4? You see that helping this attribution tracking? How do you see that playing into everything?
At least with customers that I've spoken to, there's still a lot of friction and there's still a lot of resistance in terms of kind of moving over from universal. I think it's very natural because as humans, we resist change. Personally, and in my opinion, all of the sites that we have launched since maybe the middle of last year have already been integrated with GA4 directly. So we haven't really had much of a pushback in terms of our internal team, but I do still see that with clients. In terms of actually helping with tracking, it can, but it won't do it naturally. It won't do it just because it's not like it's so much cooler now with GA4 that it does it automatically. You have to do still some work, especially if you're talking about, for example, cross-device, so you can merge some different streams of data into the same property. So great. I mean, you have one property where you can pull in some mobile app data and then maybe some website data and maybe some server-side data. Sure, that's great. But it doesn't mean that your average Joe is going to be able to set all of that themselves, so it does give you the flexibility, but you do need some sort of a strong candidate within your team that's able to understand that and put those streams together so that they can help you tell the story. But it did bring a lot of functionality. And again, that's something that we were all kind of craving for, but it's only benefiting right now those who are a little bit more tech savvy, those who have the resources to have a web specialist work on setting things up for them. So I do think that it's been a great change, at least on our site. We are using that. So for example, for AdClicks, we have a property where we are receiving streams of data from mobile devices as well as our website. And we have done that for some of our larger customers also, especially those that have, for example, different pages for different countries and that also have mobile apps that's per purchases. And that's been really helpful for us. So at least in our opinion, it's been well received. But I do understand why there's a lot of friction because some of the preset views, for example, that was a big thing for me. You had a lot of preset views before that were a lot easier to navigate. Now I tend to have to go in to create a custom report just to see something that you could have seen in Universal with just one click. So it made a couple of things maybe hidden that you would have normally been able to find pretty quickly. But I think the resistance that you're seeing is just because it does require a little bit more technical knowledge to get the things out of it, but it does have more functionality available.
Got you. And in addition to Google and GA4, do you see any of the other social platforms doing anything really interesting with their metric tracking or their attribution tracking? Especially, again, like it just seems to me that there's been a lot of talk this year about going cookieless, the targeting towards ID, everything else, single login ID, passkey ID, logins, everything. So basically, Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook can track the entire user path, all without depending upon third-party cookies. So, and a lot more exact. Is there anything else that you see that really excites you about attribution tracking or reporting going into, the rest of 2023 or anything on the horizon?
I think for the time being, there isn't really that much more that you'll see outside of, again, just a lot of the things that are available within GA4 that Google has implemented. I think, for example, another thing that's really interesting within GA4 and the Tag Manager is that you actually have server-side tracking, which is, I think, something that is going to be really cool for certain industries and certain businesses that is beyond, let's say, the capabilities of your standard tracking person, And so we see a lot of that come through, but again, the entry level or the entry barrier for you to be able to implement that as a business is going to be very tricky. And I think what we should all do as agencies is to maybe cross-train our team, is to invest a lot in, being able to get some more resources to implement some of these things for our customers on their behalf, because I think they can get a lot of that. But again, I think that the short story, or the more important point of action for people in this year, is implement those micro conversions that ultimately help you tell a bigger story, and then you can create that story yourself. So use some sort of a micro conversion, make sure that you're implementing tracking within all of your devices or all of your applications. For example, if you not only have your website, but you also have, for example, a mobile application, which a lot of people now have. And then again, combine that with information within your CRM, so that your CRM also allows you to see some sort of truth within that. And one thing that we are also seeing very much of is this concept of looking at the return on ad spend, but looking at it from a global standpoint as opposed to a per publisher standpoint. To give you an example, it's so difficult sometimes to see the specific source of a conversion, especially if the person decided to block cookies. So then you don't really have any of that. So I see that a lot, because at least internally within our campaigns, I get CC'd on every form submission. And so every form submission comes in, for example, with the lead source and, what was the prior referring domain. And a lot of times I see those come through blanks because, again, the person did it either on some sort of a browser that has enhanced protection. And a lot of browsers have that now, Firefox, Chrome, they all have that additional enhanced protection for cookies and cookie prevention. And so because I see that, then I know that when I go to my director of marketing, I can't be like, hey, you've only driven this many leads from Google Ads or this many leads from Facebook. Because it's also a little bit tough on them. Me as a business owner, trying to push my marketing team, I have to be more aware of the fact that here's your advertising budget. Here's your quota for how much I think we should be able to get out of that as a return. And then how you distribute that across your different publishers, that's maybe not as important to me as a business owner, but more so that you're able to combine that and give me that return on ad spend. Because again, different sources are going to influence that buying funnel differently. So we might be able to get more newsletter subscriptions by using our Facebook ads, for example. We might be able to get more website visits by just kind of publishing on LinkedIn, for example, and get some educational content out there. And so as long as you have different pieces of strategy and understand what content is going to be, let's say, best received in each of those platforms, then I know ultimately all of those are kind of playing a part in getting that ultimate return on ad spend.
Very cool. So it's obvious that you're incredibly passionate about ROI, getting the most out of the ad spend, reporting everything on the attribution standpoint, every step of the process, making sure that's all together, and also simple for your clients on the agency side or your partners on the AdClicks side, which I see you have a white label version of, to be able to communicate not only to maybe the marketer on the side, but also the C-suite, right? Because that's where the numbers talk. And I was going through your LinkedIn. I was creeping on your LinkedIn, Daniel, and I noticed that you've been at White Shark Media for 10 years and 3 months now, and you started as an SEM supervisor in 2013. Now you're the CEO. Could you tell me about that journey and how that worked out for you?
Yeah, of course. It's been super interesting. I started here when I actually had no previous experience in terms of marketing. So obviously I was a graduate of business administration, so I understand some of the marketing concepts. But when we started in 2013, at least within our region, there wasn't really a lot of traction happening for digital marketing. There was only select outlets out there. So it's been a crazy, very interesting journey for me, and I found a passion for it right away because it was a combination to me of some of the things that I'm most passionate about, which is number one, to be super creative on the messaging. I'm so obsessed with writing ad copy and doing the right creatives and seeing how it's received by customers. And then on the other side, I'm big on numbers and analytics and things along those lines. So I'm a very nerdy person, if you will. And so I think digital marketing combine those. And not everybody needs to be on the nerdy side about it, but if you have that nerdy side and the creativity, then you could be a very big success, because it could translate very well into how you interpret results and how you create campaigns for everyone. So White opened a lot of doors for me. I very quickly became, let's say, the point of reference or the point of contact in terms of larger accounts, larger strategies. So you'll see, for example, in our trajectory, I started managing smaller accounts. They moved into the larger. So when we had any new account that was in the $250,000 a month range or above, whoever would be assigned to that account would typically consult with me in terms of strategies. And I was always the flagship guy in terms of new products. I'm not sure if you were there for the ad customizer times, but that was some time ago. An ad customizers, for example, was like such a big fuss back in the day, because, especially for our customers that had a lot of like product inventory and things along those lines. When shopping launched also, for example, I was spearheading the training internally for the team in terms of how to create, for example, your PLAs and like your product feeds and things along those lines. So I've always been the guy that likes to do a little bit more than what he's asked to do. I've done tracking installations myself. For example, like I did the tracking for about a year for some of our clients within the company. I've done scripts, for example, also. So if you're familiar with Google Ad scripts, I've done a lot of those Google Ad scripts that we use in-house today. And so I think the biggest thing that has helped me move forward within the business is that I really am passionate about these things that I do. And I also care, and I created a culture within the organization that I care about everyone that I was involved with. And I always like to share everything that I knew. And so I like to read a lot. I like to put a lot of those things into practice, because I feel like if you read but you don't practice it, you don't really get to learn it enough. And so I was always adamant about that. And I like to share that with other people as well, because I feel like every time I do a training with my team and I explain something or I teach them how to do something, it also teaches me further what I already know. And so long story short, that's a little bit of my trajectory. I was also I was director of marketing for White also for a bit. So I was in charge of running our own, sales and marketing campaigns. And then I also, as I mentioned, I'm a bit of a nerd. So I was engineering for a couple of years. I actually spearheaded the development of AdClicks, the platform. I originally wrote the code for it.
Wow.
And then I handed it over to our team. We have a team of around 12 engineers at the time. So, we're a small team, but we're very capable, strong, and very knowledgeable. So very happy about what we've been able to accomplish within a year and looking forward to the future.
It's very cool. It's very cool. And when you say that, first of all, one thing I also like about search marketing is the ability to use both sides of the brain, right? To be creative and use an analytical side as well. But as you were talking about that, I was looking at the different positions within White Shark Media over the years. So you went from SEM supervisor to PPC engineer, software architect, and then back to digital advertising manager, then director of marketing, then VP of technology, and now CEO. So you weren't kidding about going back and forth, actually writing everything up, putting together the technology, and then managing the campaign, this and that. So that's really cool to see that balance at the end of the day.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think what I've been for the business is I've been the guy that if you need me, I'll get it done. And that's essentially what I've been. When we needed, for example, to implement something on the technology side, I was there. And when we needed to kind of push further on the marketing, then I was there. And so now I am here in the CEO position. We are trying to drive the business forward. We're trying to grow and become a leader in terms of marketing platforms. And I'm very much looking forward to being able to accomplish that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's been a pleasure having you on the show today, Daniel. I really appreciate you taking the time, not just to talk a bit about TikTok, ChatGPT, multi-touch attribution points, AdClicks, etc. But a little bit about your personal story, because I really love hearing how everyone's gotten to where they are right now, and I'm sure there's a lot more to come. So it's really been a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you, Lauren. And I think if I could just say this was actually a big moment for me because I am a huge fan of Search Engine Journal, and our team internally, they follow you guys religiously, really. So just wanted to give a shout out to my team, and also to just thank you for having us over. White Shark and AdClicks and me particularly. This was amazing, and happy to be here, and hope that I can join you in the future as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Where can our viewers and listeners find you online? How can they connect with you?
Viewers, they can find me on LinkedIn, at Daniel Alvarado B, or they can find me on AdClicks.app and whitesharkmedia.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Daniel. I appreciate it. I appreciate you jumping on today. And thank you for the team at SEMrush as well for making today's show possible with your sponsorship from SEMrush. So again, thanks, Daniel. Thanks to all of your team at White Shark and AdClicks. It's cool to hear that they all read SEJ and they love SEJ. So you're definitely stroking the ego there. That's always fun to hear. And it's been a pleasure having you on today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Have a good day.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Search Engine Journal Show. If you liked this episode, subscribe to our channel for so much more and click the notification bell so you don't miss a thing.